Peace be upon you all. Welcome back to the Void Nusantara channel. Today, I have a story titled The Secret Behind the Tempeh Chip Factory. Before we begin, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any future stories. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's story. One morning, I was enjoying the breakfast I had prepared for myself when my mother suddenly approached me with an unexpected question. "My dear, would it be all right if I got married again?" she asked. Her words shocked me so much that I nearly choked on the chocolate bread I was eating. Ever since my father passed away 5 years ago, I had always believed that my mother would never remarry. Yet here she was, asking for my blessing. When I asked who the man was, she hesitated before finally revealing his name. Haji Darno, the wealthiest man in our village. The moment I heard his name, my heart sank. Haji Darno was known throughout the village, not only for his wealth, but also for his reputation of frequently changing partners. I immediately questioned my mother's decision. However, she explained that she had spent years struggling alone and wanted someone who could provide stability and security for our family. Although I felt uneasy and suspicious, I could see the determination in her eyes. In the end, I reluctantly gave my blessing and prayed that her decision would bring happiness rather than regret. A few weeks later, the wedding day finally arrived. Our small house was crowded with relatives and neighbors who came to help with the preparations. While everyone busied themselves with the celebration, I spent most of my time alone in my room, trying to convince myself that everything would be fine. Eventually, Aunt Lastry came to fetch me, and when I entered the living room, I saw my mother sitting beside Haji Darno. In front of them sat the marriage officiant and several witnesses. Not long afterward, the marriage contract was completed, and my mother officially became Haji Darno's wife. The wedding celebration was one of the grandest events our village had ever seen. Almost everyone attended, eager to witness the marriage of the village's richest man. Once the festivities were over, Haji Darno took my mother and me to his residence, a magnificent traditional Javanese juggalo-style house. Compared to the small rented home where we had lived since my father's death, the place felt like a palace. Years of debt from my father's medical expenses had forced us to sell our old house, leaving us with very little. Now, for the first time in years, financial worries seemed to disappear. Despite the luxury surrounding us, adjusting to life in Haji Darno's house was not easy. My mother and I quickly realized that every request he made was expected to be followed, without question. Although he treated us well and provided everything we needed, there was an invisible pressure hanging over the household. It felt as though our freedom had become limited. Even so, my mother appeared genuinely happy, and seeing her smile convinced me to remain patient and give this new life a chance. One morning during breakfast, Haji Darno surprised me with an unexpected proposal. He told me that he wanted me to learn how to manage his Tempeh chip business. My mother looked surprised and asked whether I was even interested in business. Haji Darno explained that he wanted someone trustworthy to oversee the factory one day and believed I was capable of learning. Although I was uncertain, I agreed. Deep down, I felt that refusing his offer might disappoint him and potentially create problems for my mother. After breakfast, we drove to the factory together. It was located within the same village and operated as a medium-sized home industry that employed many local residents. During the drive, Haji Darno advised me to make the most of my youth and the opportunities available to me. Upon arriving, I was introduced to Lestari, the factory supervisor and one of his most trusted employees. She greeted me warmly and immediately began showing me around the facility. The factory was divided into several sections. Some workers sliced the tempeh, while others prepared the batter, handled the frying process, or packaged the finished products. I paid close attention to every detail because I wanted to perform my duties properly. As a stepdaughter who had only recently joined the family, I felt responsible for proving myself. More importantly, I did not want any mistakes on my part to negatively affect my mother's position in the household. The entire day passed as I learned about production schedules, inventory management, worker supervision, and quality control. By the time we left the factory, evening had already arrived. During the drive home, I remained mostly silent because I still felt awkward around my stepfather. Before we arrived, he informed me that beginning the next day, Yoko, his trusted driver, would take me to the factory by myself. I simply nodded and agreed. When we returned home, my mother greeted us warmly. After taking a shower and performing ablution, I prayed the ASR prayer that I had missed earlier. While praying, however, I heard a soft voice whisper my name, Nadhira. The voice sounded unfamiliar and seemed to come from somewhere nearby. Once I finished praying, I immediately searched around my room and the surrounding hallway, but there was nobody there. Assuming it was merely my imagination, I tried to dismiss the incident and rest. Later that evening, I heard my mother's voice calling me to dinner. Believing she had come directly to my room, I got up and headed to the dining room. To my surprise, when I arrived, my mother claimed she had never entered my room at all. She said she had only been on her way there when she discovered I was already downstairs. Her statement sent a chill through my body. I was certain I had heard her voice clearly, yet there was no explanation for what had happened. Although the strange incident bothered me, I chose not to mention it. During dinner, we chatted casually about the factory and daily life. Contrary to the rumors I had heard for years, Haji Darno seemed like a caring husband. He treated my mother with respect and ensured that she never overworked herself. His trust in me also appeared genuine. For the first time since the marriage, I began wondering whether my initial suspicions had been unfair. That night, after returning to my room, I reflected on how dramatically our lives had changed. Not long ago, my mother and I had struggled to afford basic necessities. Now we lived in comfort and security, overwhelmed with gratitude. I whispered a prayer of thanks before eventually falling asleep. Yet somewhere deep inside, I still could not shake the uneasy feeling created by the mysterious voice I had heard earlier. Before dawn the next morning, I awoke to the distant crowing of a rooster. Moments later, the call to the Fajr prayer echoed across the village. After performing ablution, I walked past my mother's room and noticed that the lights were still off. Normally, she never missed the dawn prayer. The sight troubled me slightly, but I decided not to disturb her. Since she was newly married, I assumed she simply needed more rest than usual. After completing the Fajr prayer, I spent the early morning reading the Holy Quran until breakfast time. Eventually, my mother called me downstairs. As usual, Haji Darno was already seated at the dining table, looking directly at me. He reminded me that Yoko would be taking me to the factory that day and instructed me not to neglect my responsibilities. I nodded in agreement, unaware that my involvement with the factory was about to uncover secrets far darker than I could ever imagine. The next morning, after breakfast, my stepfather reminded me to carry out my duties at the Tempeh chip factory, just as he had taught me the day before. He explained that if the workers were left unsupervised, they often became careless and neglected their responsibilities. My mother also encouraged me to do my best and not disappoint him. I simply nodded and promised to work hard. After saying goodbye to both of them, I headed outside. Yoko, my stepfather's trusted driver, was already waiting beside the car, warming up the engine. He greeted me politely and asked if I was ready to leave. Once I confirmed, we began our journey to the factory. During the drive, I quietly stared out the window, watching villagers go about their daily routines. After a few minutes, Yoko broke the silence and asked how it felt to be the stepdaughter of such a wealthy man. I smiled awkwardly and admitted that many aspects of my life had changed dramatically since my mother remarried. Yoko nodded thoughtfully before telling me to always take good care of myself. His words sounded simple, but something about his tone made me feel that he was trying to warn me about something deeper. Before I could ask, we had already arrived at the factory. As soon as I stepped inside, Lestari, the factory supervisor, welcomed me warmly. She immediately guided me through the production area, showing me every stage of the process, from selecting the tempeh and slicing it to coating, frying, and packaging the finished chips. After completing the inspection, she brought me to a small office reserved for my use. There, she handed me a thick stock record book and explained that it contained all the factory's inventory reports. I thanked her and promised to study it carefully. Not long after she left, loud shouting erupted outside. Alarmed, I rushed out of the office and saw several workers running in panic. I quickly stopped one of them and demanded an explanation. The worker informed me that someone had been splashed with boiling oil during production. My heart immediately sank. I rushed to the scene and found one of the employees lying on the floor in agony. Without hesitation, I instructed Yoko to take him to the nearest hospital. What surprised me most was how calm Lestari seemed. While everyone else panicked, she simply instructed the workers to continue, working as if nothing unusual had happened. Her reaction felt unsettling. After things calmed down, I called Lestari into my office. I asked how such a serious accident could have happened. She merely shrugged and suggested that the worker had probably been careless. Although her answer did not satisfy me, I told her to remind everyone to be more careful. Once she left, I sat alone in the office, holding my head. It was only my second day managing the factory, yet a major accident had already occurred. The responsibility felt overwhelming. After lunch, Lestari and I visited the hospital to check on the injured worker. His name was Haroon when we arrived. Several members of his family were already waiting anxiously outside his room. I approached them and sincerely apologized for the accident. I assured them that the factory would cover all medical expenses and provide whatever assistance they needed during Haroon's recovery. When I finally saw Haroon, I was shocked by his condition. Much of his body had suffered severe burns, and according to the doctor, his recovery would take a very long time. Worse still, he remained unconscious. Before leaving, I instructed the doctor to provide the best treatment possible. I also asked Lestari to give financial assistance to Haroon's family so they would not struggle while caring for him. Back at the factory, I gathered all the workers together. I reminded them that no production target was worth risking their lives for. Their safety was far more important than meeting deadlines. That was when one of the younger workers revealed something disturbing. She explained that accidents occurred at the factory almost every single month. Her statement left me speechless. I immediately turned toward Lestari and demanded to know whether that was true. Reluctantly, she admitted that workplace accidents had become a regular occurrence over the years. Hearing this deeply disturbed me. A factory where accidents happened every month was not normal. Something was seriously wrong, and I intended to find out what it was. After the workers returned to their duties, I questioned Lestari further. However, she insisted that nobody knew why these accidents kept happening. According to her, management had tried many solutions, but nothing ever changed. That evening, exhausted from everything that had happened, I returned home. After taking a shower, I collapsed onto my bed and quickly fell asleep. In my dream, I found myself standing inside the factory. The building was completely silent. Suddenly, I saw an employee calmly walk toward a cutting table and deliberately slice off his own finger. Terrified, I watched as another worker climbed into a vat of boiling oil and willingly submerged himself inside. The horrifying scene felt unbelievably real. I woke up screaming. My mother was standing beside my bed, trying to calm me down. She explained that I had been having a nightmare and suggested that I cleanse myself properly after returning home from work. That night, during dinner, I told my mother and stepfather about the accident involving Haroon and the strange pattern of injuries occurring at the factory. Both seemed concerned, especially when I explained that accidents happened every month without fail. A few days later, Haroon passed away from his injuries. The news devastated me. What made it even worse was that shortly before hearing of his death, I had seen what appeared to be Haroon standing outside my bedroom window, begging for help. The next day, my mother, stepfather, and I attended Haroon's funeral. His family welcomed us respectfully and expressed gratitude for our support despite their grief. Before leaving, my stepfather handed them an envelope containing financial assistance. Weeks passed, yet the accidents continued. No matter how many safety measures were introduced, someone always ended up injured. Eventually, my stepfather decided to seek outside help. Instead of contacting a religious scholar, he invited a mystic known as Ba Jagat. The factory was temporarily closed while the old man performed rituals throughout the building. My stepfather seemed convinced that supernatural forces were involved. After completing his examination, Ba Jagat claimed that a business rival had cursed the factory using black magic. According to him, this curse was responsible for the constant accidents and deaths. He then proposed a ritual to break the curse. The ceremony required strange offerings, including a black chicken, a sheep's head, flowers, and various ritual items. Although I felt uncomfortable, my stepfather agreed immediately. On Friday Kliwon night, he secretly took me to the factory without informing my mother. When we arrived, I saw a ritual circle surrounded by red candles, flowers, and sacrificial offerings arranged on the floor. Suddenly, everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I discovered that I was tied up inside the ritual circle. My heart nearly stopped when I saw Ba Jagat and my stepfather standing nearby, smiling at me. It was then that my stepfather revealed the horrifying truth. He confessed that I was meant to be the sacrifice. According to him, the ritual that had made him wealthy required human offerings. And now it was my turn. As I cried and begged for mercy, he coldly informed me that I was not my mother's biological child. I had been adopted years ago, which made me, in his eyes, disposable. Hearing those words shattered my heart. Just as the ritual was about to begin, a group of people suddenly stormed into the factory. Among them were my mother and her friend Kadisha. They stopped the ceremony and rescued me before it was too late. Later, I learned that my mother had grown suspicious of her husband's activities and had secretly investigated him. When she discovered his involvement in dark rituals, she sought help from trusted religious figures and exposed his plans. My mother eventually confirmed that I had indeed been adopted. However, she embraced me tightly and told me that blood meant nothing compared to love. No matter where I came from, I would always be her daughter. After escaping that nightmare, we left Haji Darno behind and moved to an Islamic boarding school run by respected religious teachers. There, we dedicated our lives to learning, worship, and helping others. Several months later, news reached us that Haji Darno's factory and home had been destroyed by a massive fire. He perished in the blaze, and with his death, the dark chapter of our lives finally came to an end. Since then, my mother and I have lived peacefully. The experience taught me that wealth obtained through evil means never lasts forever, and that true happiness comes not from riches, but from faith, honesty, and the people who genuinely love us.